My wife still has no idea I've been reborn. Just like in my past life, she's offering me $5 billion to force a divorce. But I didn't cause a scene this time. Instead, I took the check and swiftly signed the divorce agreement. In my previous life, Khloe wanted to elope with a poor student from her past and kept offering me more and more money to disappear, but I stubbornly refused, always giving her the same answer: "We promised a lifetime, and I won't give up a single second of it." Because of me, a heartbroken 25-year-old Leo was forced to leave, only to die in a plane crash, his body never recovered. Believing she had lost her true love forever, Khloe took revenge on his behalf. She systematically destroyed every company under my family's Vance Corporation, driving my parents to suicide. After a full year of her relentless torment, my own life came to an end. As the water closed over my head, just before I lost consciousness for good, I saw him, Leo, alive. He was crying as he threw himself into Khloe's arms. "Khloe, I'm not dead. Someone rescued me after the plane crashed into the ocean. I finally found you." At that exact moment, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in my mind: "Ethan, Khloe and Leo are the destined protagonists of this world. You are merely the villainous supporting character, here to serve the plot. You cannot, and do not deserve to, covet what is not yours. Your storyline is now entering its final settlement." Countdown commencing. 9. It felt like only 10 seconds had passed, and yet it also felt like an entire lifetime. When I opened my eyes again, I discovered I wasn't dead. I had been reborn. Khloe's assistant stood before me, pushing a credit card across the table with a blank expression. "Mr. Vance, this is the third time I've come on behalf of Ms. Sterling to negotiate the termination of your binding contract. The amount Ms. Sterling is offering this time is substantial. You will receive $5 billion, provided you agree to let her go." As the assistant's voice droned on, my groggy mind began to clear. The memory of that mechanical voice from before my death sent a shiver down my spine. I was back 3 years in the past. After reciting his lines as if from a script, he saw my frozen stare and prepared for my inevitable refusal. As the assistant leaned down to gather the documents and leave, I placed my hand over his. "I agree." Hearing my response, the assistant's eyes widened in shock. "You've really come to a decision? You're agreeing to terminate the contract and give Ms. Sterling her freedom." Without another word, I decisively signed my name on the agreement, then slid the card into my pocket. After the assistant left, my hands were trembling and my eyes were red. I immediately called my parents. "Dad, Mom, I need you to start the process for permanent residency abroad right now. Liquidate everything, transfer all our assets overseas. I want us to leave this place and never come back." Hearing my urgent plea, my parents were stunned. "What is it, Ethan? What's happened?" I couldn't explain being reborn, but the desperation was choking me, so I scrambled for an excuse. "I had a terrible nightmare last night. I dreamed that if we stay in this country, our family will be destroyed, that we'll all die horrible deaths." They couldn't understand and tried to reason with me, but I was insistent, my voice breaking into sobs. My parents have always spoiled me, so in the end, they relented. After hanging up, I wiped away my tears, a massive weight finally lifting from my chest. Just then, Khloe walked in. Seeing me, her expression soured. "You still haven't signed? I know I'm the one breaking our deal, but $5 billion is more than enough compensation. What more could you possibly want?" Her confident tone caught me off guard. I realized her assistant hadn't told her I'd already signed the papers. I tried to explain, but she cut me off. Frowning, Khloe grabbed my arm and pulled me out the door. "You're coming with me." We sped through the city until the car screeched to a halt outside a hospital. She dragged me to the emergency ward, where we could hear a doctor's stern voice. "Ms. Sterling, Mr. Miller is prepped and ready for the kidney transplant." That's when it hit me. In my past life, I'd been in a car accident around this time and needed surgery for a ruptured kidney. Khloe never once visited me, a fact I remembered with perfect clarity. But this wasn't about me. Why on earth did she bring me here? A sudden, chilling thought struck me. "You brought me here to make me donate a kidney to Leo, didn't you?" Khloe shot me a cold look. "Not you. Me. You." I was utterly stunned. She lifted her gaze to the slender figure visible inside the operating room. Even though I had already resolved to leave her for good, hearing that she would do this for Leo still sent a sharp pain through my chest. "Do you really love him that much?" "Yes," she said. "That's why I brought you here. You're going to stay right where I can see you, and you won't do anything to jeopardize Leo's safety." With that, she had her bodyguards hold me in place, changed into scrubs, and walked into the operating room alone. The light above the door turned red. The surgery had begun. I sat there, numb, my heart aching with a dull, persistent throb. A couple of nurses walked past, arm in arm, chatting about some popular TV show. That second male lead is just the worst. He totally deserved to go bankrupt and lose his mind. Doesn't he get that the main couple is destined to be together? I listened in silence, a bitter, lonely smile touching my lips. She was right. The main characters are always destined to be together. So this time around, I, the villainous supporting character, am going to live a life that's actually my own. I'm done being the villain. I'm not playing their game anymore. The surgery was a success. When the light above the door went off, I stood up to leave, but a bodyguard blocked my path. Ms. Sterling's orders. You're not to move from this spot until she wakes up. I had no choice but to sit back down and wait. The minutes ticked by, and a sharp, twisting pain began to build in my stomach. My face contorted, and beads of sweat dripped from my forehead. I knew it was my chronic gastritis flaring up. Through pale, dry lips, I spoke to the bodyguard, my voice weak. I'm not feeling well. Could you please get me some medicine for my stomach? Or just a cup of hot water? The bodyguard stared at my pained expression, unmoved. No, Mr. Vance, whatever is wrong with you, we are not to leave this spot. Those are Ms. Sterling's orders. For Leo, she would just let me die? The pain was so intense I couldn't even sit anymore. I collapsed onto the floor, biting my lip to keep from screaming as my vision blurred. The next thing I knew, I was waking up on the cold linoleum. Seeing me stir, the bodyguard informed me with bureaucratic indifference. Miss Sterling is awake. Mr. Vance, you may now request her permission to leave. A bone-deep exhaustion filled me. My sweat-soaked clothes clung to my skin, sending a chill through my body. I pushed myself to my feet and dragged my exhausted body to her hospital room. From outside, I could hear Leo's gentle voice. Khloe, you look so pale and weak. Are you sick? By the way, were you able to find out who the kind person was that donated their kidney? I want to thank them personally. I might not have woken up without them. Khloe's hand, holding a spoon, paused for a fraction of a second before resuming its motion. She blew on the spoonful of soup and gently fed it to Leo, her voice impossibly soft. I'm fine. I was just so worried while you were in surgery, not knowing if you'd make it. That's why I look so tired. The donor has already passed away. I'll convey your thanks to their family. Don't worry, I've handled everything. Deeply moved, Leo hugged her tightly. He must have pressed against her incision, because she winced and her face went pale, but she quickly composed herself and went back to feeding him. Leo didn't notice a thing, snuggling against her with tears in his eyes. Oh, right, didn't the bodyguard say Ethan's gastritis was so bad he passed out from the pain? Shouldn't you go check on him? The moment she heard my name, Khloe's face hardened. He's probably just faking it for attention. Ignore him. Listening through the glass, a heavy, sour feeling settled in my chest. In our relationship, I had taken 100 steps toward her, and she had responded by taking 100 steps back. But with Leo, he didn't have to move an inch. She would cross any distance to be by his side and give him everything she had. Khloe loved Leo enough to give him one of her kidneys, but she would never let him know, afraid it would cause him pain and guilt. And in that moment, I finally understood the immense, cavernous difference between being loved and not being loved. They had no idea I was standing outside the door. After a few bites, Leo pushed the bowl away. This soup isn't very good. It's too heavy. I remember that little cafe near our old university. I used to get their soup every morning. I haven't had it in ages. I kind of miss it. Seeing the wistful look on his face, Khloe immediately put down the bowl and grabbed her car keys. I'll go get it for you. You don't have to. It's a small thing, you can just send someone. Khloe shook her head, gently helping him lie back down and pulling the blanket over him. Anything that has to do with you, any place you've been, any food you've eaten, any view you've seen, I want to experience it for myself. Wait for me. I'll be right back. As she said this, she pushed the door open and came face to face with me. The smile on her face vanished instantly, replaced by her usual cold, distant mask. What are you doing here? Are you trying to give Leo a hard time again? Watching her expression shift so quickly, my fingers trembled. I took a shallow breath and explained quietly, I just came to tell you that I won't bother Leo anymore. You don't have to worry. She had always been suspicious of anything I said, and this was no different. You want me to stop worrying? Then terminate our contract for good. Set me free. With that, she turned and walked away, not hearing the words I mumbled to her retreating back. Khloe, I've set you completely free. Back at the house, I had a small bite to eat and then started packing my things. Most of the things in the house were mine. Only a few items belonged to Khloe, and I had bought most of those for her anyway. Her makeup, perfume, her favorite mug, her toothbrush, I didn't leave a single trace. I threw them all out, along with the candid photos I'd taken of her, the love letters I'd written as a teenager, and every other piece of memorabilia. On the day I finished clearing out the last of our things from the mansion I once considered a home, Khloe came back. She noticed something was off the moment she walked in, her eyes scanning the room. "Where are my things?" "I threw them out," I answered honestly. She gave me a cool glance, her eyes narrowing. "I'm gone for a few days and you throw a childish tantrum like this?" "I only threw away the things I bought for you. I didn't touch anything that was actually yours. Besides, you never used any of it, so I tossed it." Hearing my explanation, she assumed I was complaining that she hadn't been home, that she was violating our agreement. She frowned, her voice laced with ice. "I've told you before, I have no intention of honoring that contract. I don't want to spend my life with you. Think about it and just sign the papers." "Hasn't your assistant told you?" "The last time he was here Before I could finish, Leo walked in, speaking in a soft voice. "Mr. Vance, Khloe has been at the hospital taking care of me. That's why she hasn't been home. If you're angry, please, blame me." Seeing Leo bow apologetically, Khloe rushed to his side and helped him up, frowning. "Leo, don't apologize. My relationship with him was always just a business transaction. There were never any real feelings involved." Hearing her words, my heart seized in my chest, and a tremor ran through me. She was right. In her eyes, it had only ever been about money. That's why she kept raising her offer, trying to buy her way out. The only one who ever had genuine feelings in this arrangement was me. I looked at the tender, loving way she gazed at Leo, then turned and walked back to my room. A few moments later, there was a knock on the door. Leo entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, looking at me timidly. "Mr. Vance, Khloe's on a conference call. I made some coffee and brought you a cup. I was hoping we could talk. In my past life, I would have refused and thrown him out. But now, since I'd already decided to leave, there was no need to be hostile." My tone was even. "What do you want to talk about?" He nervously clenched his fists, his eyes clouded with worry. "I know you and Khloe grew up together, but you can't force someone to love you. You're using a contract to keep her by your side, but she's miserable every single moment. You're not getting the love you want, and in the end, you'll both just end up hurt. Is that really what you want?" My expression grew complicated as he spoke. I looked at him for a long moment, then gave a humorless smile. "And what position are you in to be saying all this to me? I love her, just as much as you do, and I can't stand to see her suffer like this. She doesn't love you. Your very presence is a constant reminder of the most difficult, painful time in her life. She's not just trying to escape a cage you built with your love, she's trying to escape that darkness. She's too proud to ever show anyone how wounded she is, but she can't escape the shadow of her past. That's why she's so withdrawn and melancholic whenever you're around." I froze. For the very first time, I understood why she was so desperate to get away from me. It was true. I had been with her through the 4 darkest years of her life. I had seen her at her absolute lowest. I thought that sharing that struggle would be the foundation for love, but for Khloe, who just wanted a fresh start, I was nothing more than a walking, talking nightmare she couldn't shake. She had shown her softest, most vulnerable side to Leo, which could only mean one thing: I had never truly been a part of her world. An overwhelming wave of bitterness washed over me, and the last embers of my stubborn obsession finally turned to cold, dead ash. I didn't want to appear weak in front of him, but I couldn't control the wave of grief. I stood up, needing to get away. Thinking I was shutting him down, Leo rushed after me, reaching out to stop me. "Mr. Vance, I just want you to understand." Before he could finish his sentence, he stumbled in his haste and knocked over a decorative shelf against the wall. Several heavy vases came crashing down on top of me. I let out a pained grunt and collapsed, shards of porcelain cutting into me, the color draining from my face as intense pain made it impossible to breathe. Leo was terrified. Before he could even react, my dog, seeing me hurt, rushed forward to protect me, and Leo went pale with fear. He'd been bitten by a dog as a child, so the sight of my big golden retriever sent him into a panic. He turned and ran, with the dog in hot pursuit. In his terror, he twisted his ankle and went tumbling down the main staircase. A man's scream echoed through the mansion. Khloe rushed out at the sound, and her face went ashen when she saw the scene. She flew down the stairs and gathered Leo into her arms, her expression one of pure agony as she looked at the ugly, bleeding gash on his forehead. She lifted her furious, red-rimmed eyes to my dog at the top of the stairs, a fire of pure rage in her chest. I had heard the scream too. Fighting through my own pain, I managed to pull myself up to see what was going on. The moment I was visible, I was met with Khloe's furious, uncontrolled shouting. "Leo just had surgery, he's weak. And you know he's terrified of dogs. Why would you let your dog attack him?" I never imagined it would escalate like this. The pain was suffocating, and I could only force out a weak, wheezing explanation. "It was He knocked over the shelf first. Buddy only went after him because he saw me get hurt. You know, Buddy is usually so gentle. He's terrified of strangers. He was just worried about me. Enough, she screamed. I don't want to hear your pathetic excuses. Since you can't control your animal and it's injured Leo this badly, then we'll have it put down. That way it won't cause any more trouble. She refused to listen to a word I said, instead calling for her bodyguards and ordering them to seize the dog. Seeing the large men advancing, Buddy immediately went on guard. A cold dread washed over me. My first instinct was to shield him with my own body, to beg them to leave him alone. The bodyguards were ruthless. They slammed me against the wall to restrain me and went for my dog. Seeing me pinned, Buddy went into a frenzy, lunging at them. One of the guards raised a steel baton and brought it down on him, again and again. He was covered in blood, still barking, trying to get to me, when another guard grabbed him by the leg and hoisted him into the air. He thrashed with all his might, trying to break free. The guard couldn't hold on, and his grip slipped. The next second, Buddy fell from the second-floor landing, plummeting to the marble floor below. Buddy! The sight shattered me. I stumbled down the stairs and gathered his broken body in my arms, watching as the light faded from his eyes. He managed one last, weak nuzzle against my hand, and then he was gone. In that moment, I felt a pain so profound I thought my heart would literally break. I held his cooling body, tears streaming down my face as I looked up at Khloe, my voice filled with utter despair. If you hate me, then just hate me. Why did you have to be so cruel? Why did you have to kill him? He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything wrong. But right then, all Khloe could see was the unconscious Leo. She shot me a glacial look. He wasn't the one at fault. You are. Did you think you could escape punishment just because your dog died in your place? I'm telling you right now, I will not let what happened to Leo go unpunished. After saying this, she gave a few quiet orders to her bodyguards. The wail of an approaching ambulance grew louder. Without a second glance at me, she left with Leo. Buddy's broken leg rested limply in my palm. As I watched her walk away, something inside me broke, and I sobbed until I had no voice left. Khloe! I screamed after her. Don't you remember? When those loan sharks cornered you in that alley, Buddy saved you. They beat him, they broke his leg. That's why he was always so scared of strangers. He loved you so much. He stayed by your side when you had nothing. He got you through so many lonely nights, always waiting by the door for you to come home. How could you be so heartless? My words were choked with anguish, but she didn't even slow down. The only answer I received came from the cold voice of a bodyguard. Mr. Vance, Miss Sterling has ordered that for letting your dog attack someone, you are to be locked in the walk-in freezer to reflect on your actions. Then 3 men dragged me away and threw me inside. I clutched Buddy's body to my chest, my bloodshot eyes vacant and numb. The biting cold of the freezer washed over me, a damp chill that seemed to seep straight into my bones. I shivered uncontrollably as frost began to form on my clothes, my skin turning deathly pale. The minutes crawled by, my heartbeat slowed, and I lost consciousness. I don't know how much time passed, but I woke up in a hospital bed. A doctor was adjusting my his voice grim. How in the world did you end up locked in a walk-in freezer? 2 more minutes and you would have frozen to death. Hearing the words frozen to death, the phantom chill returned, seeping into my bones as if it had never left. I remembered my past life. After Khloe ran me over with her car, shattering my insides, she'd had me buried in a snowbank to freeze to death. And here I was, in a new life, having almost died the exact same way. So this was my fate. Loving Khloe, even just being near her, meant I would always be courting death, and everything I cared about would be destroyed. I thought of my parents in my last life, forced off a cliff to save me, and of Buddy, killed right in front of me. The pain in my chest was unbearable, and I dug my nails into my palm until I drew blood. As I was drowning in grief, my parents called. Ethan, your father and I have finished transferring all the assets. The immigration paperwork is submitted, and it should be approved by next week. Are you absolutely sure about this? What about Khloe? We thought you loved her. I stared blankly at the ceiling, my voice as flat and dead as a stagnant pond. In this life, I will never, ever love Khloe again. The words were barely out of my mouth when the door opened, and Khloe walked in, a complicated expression on her face. The instant our eyes met, I flinched away as if I'd been shocked. For all the years she'd known me, I had been like a tireless top, spinning endlessly around her, 24 hours a day. I had shamelessly told her I loved her again and again, my gaze always full of adoration. It drove her crazy. She did everything she could to push me away, even wishing I would just transfer my obsessive affection to someone else. But now that I had actually said I didn't love her, now that I was actually avoiding her gaze, she didn't seem happy at all. In fact, she looked vaguely irritated. She didn't seem to understand the feeling herself, and certainly didn't want to show it to me, so she maintained her usual icy demeanor. "So you don't love me anymore?" she scoffed. "Then why did you hurt Leo? Why do you keep faking illnesses to get my attention? Why won't you sign the contract? The doctor said you were seriously injured, but you look perfectly fine to me. You clearly have enough energy to put on a show." Faced with her derisive questions, I lowered my gaze, my voice hoarse with an exhaustion that went beyond physical. "Everything I'm telling you is the truth. It's true that I don't love you anymore, and it's true that I was sick. As for that contract you're so desperate for, I've already signed it." The words had barely left my mouth when our family's butler walked in. "Young Master Vance, the designer has finished the sketches for the wedding gowns you commissioned for Ms. Sterling last month. He sent them over for your approval." Khloe let out a sharp, angry laugh. She snatched the thick portfolio of sketches from his hands and ripped them to shreds right in front of me. Then, as our butler watched in stunned silence, she turned to leave. "Since you don't seem to understand what the truth is," she said over her shoulder, "let me teach you. I hate every single one of these designs." The door slammed shut with a bang. The butler looked at me at a loss. "Young master, I'll have the designer send over a new set immediately." I shook my head and stopped him. "Don't bother, and cancel all the other surprises and gifts I had planned for her. Destroy them. They're not needed anymore. After all, I was about to disappear from Khloe's world forever. I just had to get through this final week." I checked myself out of the hospital that afternoon. I took Buddy's body to be cremated. The big, loving dog who was always by my side, who always listened to me, was now just a small box of ashes. I brought the box home and stared at his favorite toy, which he'd left on the sofa. Memories flooded my mind. Buddy, happily retrieving a gift I'd given Khloe that she'd thrown in the trash. Buddy, staying up with me all night, resting his head on my lap whenever I was heartbroken over her. Buddy, in my past life, looking at me peacefully as he passed away from old age at 15. I closed my eyes, but tears streamed silently down my cheeks, dripping onto the floorboards. This time, there was no big, warm dog to curl up in my lap and nuzzle my hand to make it better. A few days later, I received an invitation to the wedding of 2 friends from our social circle. I forced myself to pull it together and go. My friends noticed how pale I looked and gathered around to offer their support. "Ethan, we heard Khloe took Leo to visit his parents' graves, and even went with him back to his hometown to meet his dirt-poor family. She's obviously just infatuated with that pretty boy. Don't worry about it. Don't let it get you down. You two have a contract. There's no way she's going to marry him." "Exactly," another chimed in. "Does that guy from the wrong side of the tracks really think he can marry into the Sterling family? What does he have that you don't? Khloe's just amusing herself with something new. Once the novelty wears off, she'll come back to you. You're the one who helped her rebuild her entire empire, after all. You're the one who matters." I knew they were just trying to defend my honor, but I understood something they didn't. Khloe's love for Leo was an unbreakable wall. I had no intention of bashing my head against it again, and I didn't want my friends to get caught in the crossfire. I told them, very seriously, "Our contract is over. Who she loves, who she marries, it has nothing to do with me anymore. And you should all stop talking about Leo. He's her destined leading man. No one can change that." My friends stared at me, their eyes wide with disbelief. "You've been in love with her for nearly 20 years. You're really just going to give up? Are you really okay with losing to a guy like him?" A cold voice cut through the air from behind us. "Leo is a wonderful person. He's 1,000 times better than any of you. He's sincere and kind, bright and optimistic, brave and strong. He is the only man I have ever loved, and the only one I will ever love. It's people like you, who gossip about him behind his back, that are truly disgusting, like rats in a sewer." I turned to see Khloe standing there, gently pulling a red-eyed Leo into her arms. She took out her phone and made a call. "Notify the board immediately. We are terminating all active projects with the Cole, Shaw, Vance, and Bell families." The faces of my friends went pale. They stared at her in shock. "We were just talking. You're going to cancel billions of dollars in contracts over a few words about him? Do you have to go this far?" Khloe's eyes were filled with contempt, her voice glacial. "Yes, I do. Leo is my line in the sand. Anyone who crosses it will pay the price." Her gaze swept over my friends before finally landing on me, the threat unmistakable. I knew she was just making an example of them to send me a message. I gritted my teeth. "Do you really have to be this way?" Her voice was terrifyingly cold. "Anyone who speaks ill of Leo will regret it." After my last life, I knew she meant every word. I couldn't fight her directly, so I just led my friends away. The ceremony began soon after. Even though we were at different tables, I had a clear view of Khloe and Leo. I watched as she carefully rinsed his teacup for him, as she put food on his plate and peeled his shrimp, as she intercepted every person who came to their table to offer a toast so he wouldn't have to drink. Only with Leo did she ever let down her icy guard and become so gentle, so attentive, so patient. The heart I had spent more than a decade trying to warm had melted for him in an instant. I was lost in thought when I realized the wedding had reached the bouquet toss. Leo glanced wistfully at the bride's bouquet, and the next thing I knew, Khloe was pulling him toward the crowd. He stood back as Khloe, with surprising agility, weaved through the throng and snatched the bouquet out of the air. After catching it, she smoothed down her dress, then dropped to one knee and solemnly presented the bouquet to him. There was no ring, it wasn't a proposal, but I knew what she was doing. She was making a silent declaration to him, and to everyone in the room. She had chosen Leo. She would marry no one else. In an instant, every eye in the room turned to me. Faced with their looks of pity, sympathy, and even mockery, I raised my hands and began to applaud. I genuinely hoped she would get everything she ever wanted. That way, I could finally leave and live my own life in peace. After the reception, I was heading out when I ran into Khloe in the lobby. The moment our eyes met, I tried to look away and walk past, but she stopped me. About terminating our contract. Have you made a decision? Or is the price not to your satisfaction? Just name your number. I was tired of trying to explain things to her. I kept my head down, my voice flat and emotionless. Let me ask you something. In your eyes, is that all I am to you? Is our entire history, more than a decade of it, something you can just pay off and be done with? If I take your money, we draw a line, and we never have to see each other again for the rest of our lives. Is that it? My questions seemed to render her speechless. She just stared at me, a complicated, unreadable emotion slowly surfacing in her eyes. I could see she wanted to say something else, that she only wanted to end our twisted arrangement, not cut me out of her life completely. But then she saw Leo walking out of the men's room nearby, and the words died on her lips. Instead, she said a single word, one that meant the exact opposite. Yes. Hearing her say it out loud, even my numb heart felt a dull, heavy ache. But I quickly composed myself. Watching her take Leo's hand, their fingers intertwining, I gave a slight nod. I understand. Don't worry. I'll give you what you want. In 5 days, you'll have everything you've been asking for. 5 days? What do you mean, 5 days? She asked, frowning. But I had already turned and walked away. A moment later, I heard Leo say he was hungry, and I knew she had already forgotten my words. Back home, I liquidated the last of my personal assets. My gaming collectibles, my sports cars, the properties in my name, all of it was converted to cash. That night, a storm rolled in. As I was packing my last suitcase, I heard a frantic pounding on the front door. I opened it to find Leo, soaked to the bone, who immediately dropped to his knees in front of me, sobbing. Mr. Vance, Khloe collapsed today. They took her to the ER, but I'm not family, so I couldn't sign the consent forms for her treatment. I had to track down her aunt who lives overseas, and she almost missed the window for critical care. She's in the ICU right now. You know her parents are gone. She doesn't have anyone else. I'm begging you, please end the contract. Set her free. I want to be her husband. I can't stand by and do nothing at a time like this, just watching her die because of a piece of paper. Faced with his desperate plea, I remembered that Khloe had also fallen gravely ill around this time in my past life. The moment I found out, I had her transferred to the best private hospital in the state and flew in specialists from all over the country. Because of that, she pulled through without any major complications. Afterwards, I stayed by her bedside for days, barely sleeping, so exhausted I could hardly stand. But when she finally woke up, she was furious that I had snapped at Leo in a moment of stress, and she threw me out of her room. So this time, I didn't get involved. I just pretended I didn't know. And Leo, a regular guy with no money, no connections, and no influence, was obviously not equipped to handle a crisis like this, to pull the strings necessary to get her the best possible care. It was only natural that Khloe would suffer more this time. But she was the story's heroine. I knew she would be fine in the end, so I wasn't worried. I just told him calmly, Mr. Miller, do you ever watch those romantic dramas on TV? You know how it goes. The rich, handsome hero and the sweet, innocent heroine fall in love at first sight, but they have to overcome countless obstacles before they can finally be together. It's the same for you and Khloe. No matter what trials you face, not even a villain like me can stop you from getting your happy ending. So you don't need to worry about her. You are her destiny. You're the one she'll grow old with, and I won't stand in your way anymore. I've already given Khloe what you came here for. Please, go home. Frantic with worry, Leo just stared at me with blank eyes, clearly not understanding a word I'd said. I didn't bother explaining further. I just closed the door and went upstairs. It rained all night. The next morning, I came downstairs and found that Leo hadn't left. He had been kneeling in the front yard all night. His face was sheet white, and he looked dazed and ready to collapse. I was shocked by the sight of him and started to go help him. But before I could reach him, Khloe, who had just arrived, shoved me aside. She was still in a hospital gown, her face utterly devoid of color, but she wrapped her arms tightly around Leo. She felt his burning forehead, and when she looked at me, her eyes were sharp and cold as ice. "Ethan, he has never done anything to you. How could you make him kneel out here in the pouring rain all night? How can you be so cruel?" Faced with her furious accusation, I clenched my fists, a profound sense of helplessness washing over me. It had nothing to do with me. I told him to go home last night. He's the one who decided to stay here kneeling for hours without saying a word. "Oh, I'm sure it had nothing to do with you," she spat. "Leo is unconscious now, so you can say whatever you want, can't you? He can't defend himself. But you know exactly what you did, and so do I. So don't bother with your pathetic lies. You had better pray nothing serious happens to him, or I swear, I will make you pay." After her tirade, she started rushing Leo back toward the hospital, ordering her men to force me into the car with them. During the drive, Khloe never took her eyes off the unconscious Leo, her expression a mask of pure anguish as she repeatedly urged the driver to go faster. The driver was sweating, his nerves stretched to the breaking point. As he sped through an intersection, he didn't see the sports car coming up fast from the side. A second later, the two cars collided. I was in the passenger seat and took the brunt of the impact. My head slammed against the door, and an agonizing pain shot through my torso, as if all my organs had been violently shifted. The pain was so intense I couldn't breathe. My consciousness began to fade into a haze of agony and confusion, my eyelids growing heavy. A red film covered my vision. Just before I blacked out, I saw her through the shattered window, helping a bloodied Leo out of the car and walking away. In the hazy moments that followed, I heard the wail of sirens and the urgent voice of a paramedic. "This one has a severed artery. We need to get him into surgery now or he's going to bleed out." Then another voice directed at her. "Ma'am, are you sure you want us to prioritize the patient with the fever? His injuries aren't life-threatening. A delay in treatment won't pose any risk." Khloe's voice reached me from a distance, the last thing I heard before everything went black. "I only care about Leo's safety. I don't care how badly Ethan is hurt, you save Leo first. Anyone else's life is not my concern." I woke up as if from a long, terrible nightmare, to the sight of my parents, their faces streaked with tears. "Ethan," my mother sobbed, "the doctors said you almost didn't make it. Your father and I were so terrified, we thought we were going to have heart attacks. Thank God you're all right." The sheer relief of being alive washed over me, and I started crying too. The three of us held each other and wept for a long time. When my parents finally composed themselves, my mother gently wiped the tears from my face. "You were so badly hurt. Maybe we should postpone our move for a month. What do you think?" The memory of the accident and what followed was still terrifyingly fresh, but I shook my head firmly. "No, we're not delaying it. Mom, Dad, the hospitals in Europe are excellent. I can recover there. We're sticking to the plan. We leave tomorrow afternoon." On my last day in the country, I asked my parents to go back to the mansion one last time to pick up my luggage and Buddy's ashes. Two nurses came in to check on me, gossiping as they worked. "Did you hear the CEO of Sterling Corp is here? She booked out the entire VIP wing and has every senior specialist on staff attending to her boyfriend, who apparently just has a fever. Wow, talk about spoiled. It's like something out of a TV show. Who is this guy, anyway, that he has Khloe Sterling, the most powerful woman in New York, wrapped around his finger?" The other nurse shook her head, then her eyes lit up as she looked at me. "Hey, you were brought in at the same time as him. Do you know him? Is he from some important family?" My eyelashes fluttered. I lowered my gaze, my voice quiet. "I don't know him. Maybe he's just like you said, the hero of the story. How would a background character like me know anything about the main plot?" The nurses seemed to accept that, removed the extra pillow from under my arm, and left, still chatting amongst themselves. The room fell silent. I picked up my phone and methodically deleted every trace of Khloe from my contacts. Just as I finished, my parents called to say they were arriving at the hospital. An orderly helped me into a wheelchair and pushed me out of the room. As the elevator doors slid open, I saw Khloe's assistant standing there. He gave me a polite nod and held up a folder in his hand, his tone formal and distant. "Mr. Vance, I was sent on an unexpected business trip for the last 2 weeks, right after you signed the agreement. I haven't had a chance to submit it yet. Rest assured, I will deliver it to Ms. Sterling immediately." I was about to respond when I heard Khloe's voice from behind me. I turned and met her cold, frosty eyes. How many times does this make it now? He's still refusing to sign. The assistant looked confused and opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. See for yourself. I took the folder from his hands and held it out to her. Seeing my blank expression and her assistant's hesitant one, a flicker of suspicion crossed her face. She was about to open the folder when her phone rang. It was Leo. Khloe, where are you? The nurse says it's time for your tests. You need to come back. She closed the folder without looking inside and shoved it back at her assistant. Don't bother. I know he didn't sign. Draft a new one. This time, offer him 10 times the amount. After giving her order, her eyes shifted back to me, her voice tense. This will be the 4th time I've increased the offer. I hope, for your sake, you don't disappoint me again. With that, she turned on her heel and strode back toward the VIP wing. The assistant looked at me, completely bewildered. Mr. Vance, I don't understand. But I knew. She was just in a hurry to get back to her true love. Watching her walk away, a genuine smile of relief spread across my face. Nothing in this world matters to her except for Leo. As for the fact that I've set her free, you can tell her about it the next time she actually bothers to listen. The elevator doors dinged open. My parents came to my side, smiling, and draped a heavy coat over my shoulders. Then they wheeled me out of the hospital and toward the airport. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. I lifted my hand, feeling the warmth on my skin, and the deep, persistent chill that had settled in my bones finally began to fade. Before we boarded, I held up our 3 plane tickets and smiled at my parents. Dad, Mom, let's forget the past. It's time to start our new life. This time, I'm done being a supporting character. I'm going to be the one and only, irreplaceable protagonist of my own story. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Khloe was gently comforting a crying Leo. Didn't the doctor say that if you just rest and take it easy, all your levels will return to normal? Leo nodded, hugging her. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. Khloe, I'll take good care of you. I'll make sure you get better soon. They embraced, holding each other as if nothing in the world could ever tear them apart. A knock at the door interrupted their tender moment. Ms. Sterling, I still haven't given you this contract. Khloe's gaze shifted to her assistant at the door. She took the folder he offered and flipped it open casually. He still hasn't signed it, has he? Why are you giving this to me? Khloe flipped to the final page and froze, staring at the familiar signature at the bottom. Khloe, what is it? Leo leaned in and saw my signature as well. Staring at the date next to my name, her knuckles went white as she gripped the folder. He signed it. Her hand was trembling as she looked up at her assistant, a dazed expression on her face. Ms. Sterling, Mr. Vance signed this 2 weeks ago. He took the card. Hearing this, Leo was overjoyed and threw his arms around Khloe. This is wonderful. Khloe, we can finally be together. But Khloe didn't seem nearly as happy as he'd expected. She was trembling, and the folder slipped from her grasp, hitting the floor with a sharp crack. You're telling me he actually signed it? Her assistant looked nervous. Yes, Ms. Sterling. He signed it in my presence 2 weeks ago. Ms. Sterling? He asked, seeing her stunned expression. He quickly added, please be assured, Ms. Sterling, the signature has already been verified by our legal team. It is legally binding. Well then, I suppose we're finally even, Khloe said, snatching the folder off the floor and shoving it into her assistant's chest. For some reason, she felt a strange sense of emptiness. Khloe, Leo exclaimed, his eyes shining with tears of joy. She sat on his lap. Leo, we can finally be together. Seeing this, her assistant quickly excused himself, quietly closing the door to the private suite behind him. Khloe leaned in and kissed the tears from his eyes, and for a long time, the room was filled with the sounds of their passion. Back at the mansion, Khloe led Leo inside. He looked worried. Khloe, will Mr. Vance be angry that you brought me here? She silenced him with a kiss. Let him be. You're the one I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. You're my future husband. What is Ethan Vance to me now? The only reason I haven't kicked him out already is out of respect for our past. She punched in the security code and the front door swung open. She gently took Leo's hand. Leo, you can move into the master bedroom. I'll have Ethan move his things to one of the guest rooms. She gave his hand a reassuring squeeze. But when Khloe pushed open the door and saw the state of the house, she stopped dead in her tracks. Khloe, what is it? Leo asked, looking at her frozen form. After a moment, Khloe shook herself out of it and forced a smile. It's nothing. Come on in, Leo. She took a few steps inside, but there was no familiar, furry body brushing against her legs. Buddy, the golden retriever, would never again come running to greet her, tail wagging, with his happy doggy grin. She glanced up at the second-floor landing. Normally, Ethan would be standing there, leaning against the railing, smiling down at her as she came through the door. She shook her head, pushing the thought away. Leo, she said, from now on, this is your home. She led Leo upstairs and pushed open the door to the master bedroom, ready to tell me to clear out my things. But the sight that greeted her made her freeze. The room was empty. Gone were my collectibles that used to cover every surface. Gone were the candid photos of her I kept on the headboard. Gone was the vase of fresh flowers I always kept on the nightstand. The bedroom before her was completely bare. Everything I had so carefully arranged was gone without a trace. She lunged forward and yanked open the desk drawer. The drawer that had once been filled to bursting with my love letters to her was now empty. She threw open the closet doors and found that all of my clothes were gone. Even the custom dresses I had designed just for her had vanished, leaving only a few of her own garments hanging there. A look of displeasure crossed her face. She called for one of the maids. Where are Mr. Vance's things? The maid looked surprised. Ms. Sterling, Mr. Vance's parents, came by this morning to pick up the last of his things. They said the family was moving abroad. You didn't know? Khloe leaned heavily against the desk, a faint smile on her lips. Well, at least he was smart enough to leave on his own. Leo came up behind her and wrapped her in a hug, his voice filled with happiness. Khloe, this is wonderful. There's nothing standing between us anymore. His words seemed to snap her out of her daze. She turned and hugged him back. Leo, we've finally made it. She buried her face in his neck. I'm just so happy. Everything has worked out perfectly. As long as I have you, Leo, I don't need anything else in the world, she whispered, before gently kissing his forehead. Before I stepped onto the jet bridge, I took one last look back at the city. It held so many of my memories, so much of my life with Khloe. Without any further hesitation, I turned and walked into the plane. The past could stay in the past. The plane to Europe climbed steadily into the sky, leaving a thin white contrail that quickly vanished. I spent the next 2 weeks recovering in a private clinic in Paris, my body slowly healing. I would look out my window at the vibrant scenery, the bright Parisian sun, the lush green lawns, couples enjoying picnics, and in the distance, the Eiffel Tower standing silently against a brilliant blue sky. It was all captivating. Once my tests all came back clear, I checked out of the clinic. Basking in the sunlight, I felt a sense of freedom in both body and soul. I realized I could actually leave it all behind. I no longer had to ache over Khloe's coldness or agonize over Leo's existence. In that moment, I was a completely new person, the master of my own destiny. Back at my family's new villa on the Seine, I threw myself into planning a trip across Europe. A few days later, wearing a baseball cap and a simple hoodie, I found myself on the streets of Rome. I stood before the ruins of the Roman Forum, gazing up at what was left of the Temple of Venus and Roma, completely in awe. Afterwards, I made my way to the Trevi Fountain, where I sat on the edge, eating a gelato I'd bought from a nearby vendor. I watched the tourists and locals pass by, simply enjoying a quiet moment to myself in Rome. A woman in a simple white dress approached me, stopping in front of me and lowering her sunglasses. I looked up at her. She had striking, elegant features and the most incredible blue eyes, the color of the deep sea. Thinking I was in her way, I started to get up, but she put a hand on my wrist to stop me. Mr. Vance, you don't remember me? She had a bright, easy smile that, under the warm Roman sun, made my heart beat a little faster. I silently cursed myself for being so easily flustered by a beautiful woman. I smiled back. I'm sorry, have we met? She shrugged, still smiling. Mr. Vance, I was your attending doctor at the clinic in Paris. When I still looked at her blankly, she raised a hand and covered the lower half of her face. Does this help you recognize me now? Her face suddenly clicked into place, merging with the memory of the doctor in the oversized surgical mask from the clinic. Oh, I'm so sorry, Dr. Rousseau, I said, embarrassed. Without the mask, I didn't recognize you. She laughed. Mr. Vance, if you're truly sorry, perhaps you could make it up to me by showing me around Rome? Since I had been the one to be rude, I readily agreed, and we began to walk through the Roman streets together. Are you on vacation as well, Dr. Rousseau? I asked. She nodded. After you were discharged, the hospital gave me some time off. I decided to travel around Europe for a bit, and I just happened to run into you. Her smile was dazzling in the afternoon sun, and I felt a little lightheaded. Please, I said quickly, you don't have to be so formal. Call me Ethan. She smiled back. All right, Ethan, and you must call me Isabel. The Roman sky was a perfect, cloudless blue. We wandered over to the Spanish Steps and sat down together, enjoying the gentle breeze. After a moment, Isabel asked, Ethan, can I ask you why you came to Europe? When I didn't answer right away, she quickly held up her hands. I'm sorry, Ethan. I don't mean to pry. I was just curious. Your injuries were so severe. Yet you insisted on being transferred from New York all the way to Paris for your recovery. She paused for a moment. I was sent to the US for a medical conference once. The quality of care there is just as good as in France. It wasn't as if your injuries were untreatable there. I cut her off, because I went through something terrible back home, something that nearly killed me and destroyed my entire family. She looked at me apologetically. I'm sorry, I had no idea. I met her clear blue eyes. It's okay, Isabel. It's all in the past now. All you have to do is let go and start fresh. My relieved smile was reflected in her eyes. The breeze stirred a few loose strands of her hair, brushing them gently against her face. I saw a flicker of something in her expression, and she quickly looked down, as if to hide it. Ethan, she said, holding out her hand to me, I'd like to amend my earlier invitation. I don't just want to see Rome with you. If you'd be willing, I'd like to invite you to spend the rest of my vacation with me. My heart skipped a beat. I placed my hand in hers. I would be honored, Ms. Russo. A smile spread across her face. I know a great little cafe just around the corner. We walked side by side into the cafe, where a gentle piano melody was playing. I stopped to admire the various paintings on the walls, and Isabel explained, this is the oldest cafe in Rome. Famous artists, writers, even composers have been regulars here for centuries. We took a seat, and a waiter in a tailcoat took our order. I ordered a tea, and Isabel ordered a latte and a croissant. As I was admiring the decor, she pushed the warm, fragrant croissant across the table to me. Here, try some. She smiled at me gently. I took a bite. It was perfectly flaky and buttery, with a rich flavor that had a surprising hint of citrus. This is delicious, I said, putting it down. I lowered my head, but not before a large tear splashed onto the table, followed by another and another. Isabel was clearly taken aback and didn't know what to do. After a moment, she got up and came to my side, putting her arms around me from behind. Ethan, what's wrong? She asked softly, gently rubbing my back. I used to have a dog. His name was Buddy, I managed to say, trying to keep my voice from breaking, but the tears wouldn't stop. They beat him badly. He was trying to protect me, and he fell from the second floor. She gently guided my head to rest on her shoulder, letting me cry into her shirt. Back home, I choked out. Whenever I'd buy croissants, Buddy would rest his head on my lap and just watch me eat, his eyes wide. I let out a wet, broken laugh. You know, sometimes he would drool so much it would leave a big wet spot on my pants. She continued to rub my back, her voice gentle. I understand how painful it is to lose a pet. I would never ask you to just forget him. But, she continued, her voice so soft it felt like magic. If you're ever missing him, you're welcome to come to my house. I have a dog too. Maybe he could help cheer you up. Quickly wiped my eyes. Really? Thank you, Isabel. She knelt in front of me, her blue eyes as gentle as the ocean. It's true. He's a Bernese mountain dog. His name is Winston. Hearing the formal name, I couldn't help but let out a real laugh. Who would have guessed that the elegant, composed Dr. Rousseau went home every day and called out for a dog named Winston? Her fingertips gently wiped a stray tear from my cheek, her eyes sparkling. Do you know why I stopped you back at the fountain? I shook my head. She smiled softly. You were just sitting there in your hoodie and sandals, not looking at me or anyone in particular, just watching the world go by. The smile in her eyes grew, and I thought to myself, he looks like a star from an old black and white movie. So handsome I couldn't look away. My heart started hammering in my chest, so loud it seemed to drown out every other sound in the world, leaving just the two of us. So I walked over, and that's when I recognized you. It was selfish of me to ask you to spend the day with me, but then I got even greedier. I wanted you to spend the rest of my vacation with me. Her beautiful face drew closer, and my mind went completely blank. I felt a soft, cool touch as her lips brushed against my cheek for just a second. Sorry, she said, pulling back with a small, apologetic smile. But at least you've stopped crying. Back in New York, at the city's largest amusement park, Khloe held Leo's hand, a look of fond exasperation on her face. Khloe, look. Leo's face lit up with a huge smile as he pointed at a costumed mascot posing for pictures with visitors. Khloe smiled indulgently, letting him pull her over to take a picture with the character. Khloe, look, he said excitedly, holding the freshly printed instant photo up for her to see. For a second, Khloe froze. In her mind's eye, Leo's face blurred and merged with the image of someone else. She remembered, right after they'd signed their contract, when she'd been forced to come to the same amusement park with me. I had excitedly pulled her over to take a picture with a mascot, then showed her the photo, my face beaming with joy. She had slapped it out of my hand. Ethan, I can't believe how childish you are, she had said coldly, before walking away. But later, she had seen that same photo, carefully placed in a frame on my nightstand. In the picture, I was holding her hand, smiling from ear to ear. It was only then that she realized that after she had walked away, I must have knelt down, carefully picked up the dirt-smudged photo, and kept it like a priceless treasure. A sharp pain went through her chest. Leo noticed her change in expression and quickly put his arm around her. "Khloe, what's wrong?" His voice snapped her out of the memory. She quickly composed herself and reassured him. "I'm fine, Leo. It's just a little hot out here." Seeing that she seemed okay, Leo grinned mischievously and pointed toward a haunted house attraction in the distance. "Khloe, you feel up for a challenge?" She nodded, playfully swatting his arm. "You're always trying to get me into trouble." They walked into the haunted house and were plunged into darkness. As they made their way through, animatronic monsters and costumed actors jumped out at them. Khloe screamed and buried her face in Leo's chest, her whole body shaking. "Khloe!" Leo grabbed her, holding her close as they moved forward. He didn't notice that her hands were clenched into fists, her palms icy cold. She was forcing herself to suppress a deep, primal fear. Ever since her parents had taken their own lives while she was asleep in the next room, Khloe had been terrified of the dark. I knew about this hidden trauma. Every night, I would leave a warm nightlight on for her. And even though I wasn't afraid of such things out of consideration for her, I never once suggested going to a place like a haunted house. Ethan would never have brought me here, she thought. The idea popped into her head so suddenly it startled her, and she tried to push it away. "Leo," she said, her grip tightening on his hand, "let's get out of here." Leo, who was just as scared as she was, nodded eagerly. They found a security camera and waved at it until a staff member came to escort them out. Back in the sunlight, Leo looked at her pale face with concern. "Khloe, are you okay?" She shook her head, her voice weak. "I'm fine, Leo, don't worry." He led her to a bench at an outdoor cafe so she could rest. "Wait here," he said, before running over to a nearby ice cream cart. He came back a moment later and handed her a chocolate ice cream cone. "Are you feeling a little overheated?" he asked, holding the cone to her lips. She had no choice but to take it and begin eating it slowly. The truth was, after her family went bankrupt and her parents died, she had worked around the clock to pay off their debts. She'd waitressed during the day and worked as a bouncer at a bar at night. The extreme poverty and exhaustion meant she often came home and collapsed into bed without eating, sometimes going a whole day without a meal. As a result, she had developed severe stomach problems. I was the only one who knew about it. That's why I never let her eat anything cold, and I always made sure there was warm, nourishing soup for her at home. If it had been me, I would have snatched that ice cream out of her hand and scolded her for being so careless. The thought made her feel a pang of loneliness. "Khloe," Leo said, placing a hand on her forehead. "Are you feeling sick? What's wrong?" She handed the half-eaten ice cream cone back to him. "I'm sorry, Leo. I just don't have an appetite." He frowned. "Khloe, what's really going on? Are you hiding something from me?" Seeing the worried look on his face, she just shook her head. How could she possibly explain it? That dark time in her life, the one she was so desperate to forget, had left indelible scars on her body and soul. And Ethan, the man who was a living reminder of that time, the man she had tried so hard to escape, kept invading her thoughts. She looked at him apologetically. "Leo, I'm sorry I ruined your day." He shook his head and placed a finger on her lips. "Don't say that. We can always come back another time." Her expression softened. She stood on her tiptoes and hugged him. "You're so good to me, Leo." He laughed. "If I'm not good to you, who will be?" The image of another man flashed in her mind, and she quickly pushed it away. She hugged Leo tighter. "Yes, who else is this good to me?" she thought, trying to soothe her own troubled heart. Leo turned off the lights, and they fell asleep in each other's arms. But Khloe's sleep was fitful. She dreamed, again and again, of her family's company going bankrupt, of her parents jumping from the roof of their mansion while she slept. She dreamed of selling the mansion, of selling everything of value, until she was living in a squalid tenement with a dozen other people. Her life became a miserable triangle between the restaurant, the bar, and that filthy room. Her stomach problems got worse, and she would often wake up in the middle of the night in a panic. Her roommates would wake up and curse her out, and she would just have to apologize. The weight of her family's debt was crushing her. She thought that hell would never end, until the night she tried to intervene with a drunk, belligerent trust fund kid at the bar. The drunk kid threw his drink in her face. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he slurred. "Get your filthy hands off me." Khloe's hands clenched into fists at her sides, but she kept her voice deferential. "I'm sorry, sir. Please, I have to ask you to keep it down." The kid looked ready to hit her, but a tall figure stepped between them. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." The young man who spoke had an intimidating presence. The rich kid froze, and at a wave of the young man's hand, several large bodyguards appeared and dragged him out of the bar. The young man turned back to her and draped his jacket over her shoulders, his smile warm and bright. "Khloe, I've paid off all your family's debts. You never have to live like this again." Standing there, silhouetted against the colored lights of the bar, I looked like a hero from a storybook. "From now on, you belong to me," I had said. "You can never leave me." Then her dream shifted to flashes of her life with me. She had seen my love as a prison, and she had fought with all her might to escape it. "Miss Sterling, my name is Leo Miller. I'm here to interview for the assistant position." Just like in a romance novel, the moment Khloe laid eyes on Leo, she felt an irresistible pull. She had questioned the sudden, overwhelming strength of her feelings for him, but finding no logical reason, she had simply accepted it as love at first sight. She fell desperately in love with him, willing to do anything for him, even give him one of her own kidneys. It was as if it had all been pre-written, this magnetic pull they had toward one another. And the hero who had saved her from the darkness, me, she came to despise. She hated the contract that bound her to me, she hated my suffocating love, and most of all, she hated that I was the obstacle that kept her and Leo from being together. In her dream, it was as if she were floating above it all, watching everything unfold. She saw me in the hospital hallway, clutching my stomach in agony, begging the indifferent bodyguards for medicine, only to collapse onto the cold floor. She saw the truth of what happened at the mansion. Leo's words causing me to back away into the shelf, Buddy rushing to my side only after I was hurt, and Leo twisting his ankle in his panicked retreat. She saw me, clutching Buddy's lifeless body, being thrown into the freezer, frost forming in my hair as I held him close. She saw me patiently trying to reason with Leo before closing the door, only for him to kneel outside all night, leading to her blaming me for something I knew nothing about. She saw me, bleeding out after the car crash, as she callously left me behind to die. Finally, she saw my gaunt figure standing at the top of the jet bridge, turning to board the plane without a single backward glance. Just before I disappeared inside, my lips moved, as if I were saying, "Goodbye, Khloe." She woke up drenched in a cold sweat. Her face was ashen, her nightgown soaked through. The movement woke Leo, who fumbled to turn on the bedside lamp. "Khloe, are you okay?" he asked, his face filled with alarm as he saw how pale she was. He quickly called for the housekeeper and dialed 911. Paramedics loaded Khloe into the ambulance, its siren screaming. As Leo cried her name over and over, the EMTs began running their initial checks. It was so loud. Khloe frowned, forcing her eyes open. All she could see was Leo's tear-stained face. For some reason, the sight of his frantic expression filled her with a strange sense of irritation. "This is wrong," she murmured to herself. "Khloe, what's wrong? Tell me," Leo pleaded, his tears falling onto her face. Just then, a cold, mechanical voice echoed in her mind. "Warning, female protagonist is deviating from the plot. Increased control requested." The flashing red lights of the ambulance swam before her eyes, making her dizzy. Female protagonist? Plot? Control? Before she could make sense of it, she was being wheeled into the emergency room, the double doors swinging shut, separating her from Leo. The last thing she saw was Leo's grief-stricken face. "Ethan," she whispered, a sound so faint no one heard it before she lost consciousness. Hours later, she opened her eyes and found herself staring at the sterile white tiles of a hospital ceiling. "Khloe, you're awake." Leo, who had been keeping vigil by her bed, threw his arms around her the moment her eyes opened. "Leo," she said, weakly hugging him back as he sobbed. "You're finally awake," he said, pulling back to look at her, his face a mess of tears and worry. "Don't cry, Leo," she said, her cool fingertips brushing the tears from his cheeks. For some reason, looking at him, she felt a profound emptiness, as if she had forgotten someone incredibly important, but she couldn't for the life of her remember who it was. A dull ache started behind her eyes. All she wanted was to be left alone. "Leo, don't worry about me. Go home and get some rest." He looked stunned for a second. "Khloe, you don't want me to stay?" It was so unlike her. She was always the one who wanted him by her side. "I'm fine, Leo. I just need to rest here for a bit. But you were up with me all night. I'd be heartbroken if you made yourself sick worrying about me." After much back and forth, she finally convinced him to go home. The moment his footsteps faded down the hall, Khloe collapsed back onto the plush mattress of her private room. She closed her eyes, trying desperately to remember the important person she felt she had forgotten. Slowly, she drifted off to sleep. "Khloe!" A little boy with a sweet, round face appeared before her, grinning a gap-toothed smile. He looked so familiar. She reached out to grab his hand, but her fingers closed on empty air. "Khloe," a handsome teenager in a crisp shirt said, draping his jacket over her shoulders. I've paid off all the debts. You don't have to live like this anymore. She reached out to him, wanting to ask him something, but he dissolved before her eyes. Goodbye, Khloe. The man standing before her was painfully thin, his hair blowing in an unseen wind. She lunged forward to embrace him, but he turned and walked away without a backward glance. Ethan! Chloe's eyes shot open, and she screamed his name. Crash! The bowl of soup Leo was holding slipped from his hands, shattering on the floor and splashing hot liquid everywhere. Ethan? He whispered, looking at her with disbelief as he backed away. Leo, watch out! Leo! She scrambled out of bed and grabbed him. No, Leo. It's not what you think. Let me explain. His eyes were red, his voice thick with tears. Then what is it? Tell me. It's not like that, she said, frantically wiping his tears away. It's not. She looked up at him, her expression filled with a dawning despair, as she found she couldn't stop the image of another man from flooding her mind. Ethan. The cold, mechanical voice sounded in her head again. Warning. Control ineffective. Female protagonist has deviated from the plot. In the days that followed, Isabel and I explored Rome, visiting the Colosseum, the Basilica Papali di Santa Maria Maggiore, and the Castel Sant'Angelo. We joined a crowd of people dancing in a piazza under the night sky. The bright moonlight illuminated our faces, lending a romantic air to the cool Roman evening. Isabel placed her hand over mine, and we drew closer, until our faces were only inches apart. Did you know? She asked, her blue eyes looking even more mysterious in the moonlight. What? I could feel my face growing warm, and I had to force myself not to look away. This place, the Castel Sant'Angelo, she whispered, is where a fugitive princess and a disgraced knight, after years of exile and running, finally admitted their love for each other and shared an eternal kiss. Her warm breath was hot against my cheek. She gently tilted my chin up, forcing me to meet her eyes. And what about you? I found myself looking into her deep, loving gaze. For a second, I wanted to let myself drown in those ocean blue eyes, to see what lay beneath the surface. Just as her lips were about to meet mine, I suddenly pushed her away. As she stared at me in shock, tears began to stream down my own face. I covered my face and ran, like a coward fleeing from a battle he couldn't win. I found a secluded bench in the shadows and sat down, burying my face in my knees and crying helplessly. I didn't understand why I couldn't accept Isabel's feelings. Maybe I still hadn't fully escaped the shadow of my past with Khloe. After a while, Isabel came and sat down quietly beside me. We sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the chirping of the cicadas. I'm sorry, I finally mumbled. She looked at my tear-streaked face. I'm the one who should be sorry. I was too forward. I scared you. I shook my head. When I looked at her, there was no anger in her eyes, only compassion. No, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm the one who said I was ready to move on, but I'm still trapped. She looked at me, this boy who was at once so scared and yet so brave, and asked softly, "Can I give you a hug?" I nodded, and she wrapped her arms around me. Unlike Khloe, who always smelled of expensive citrus perfume, Isabel smelled faintly of fresh-cut grass. What perfume is that? I asked, my voice muffled against her shoulder. She laughed softly. I'm a doctor. I don't usually wear perfume. Does it smell strange? No, I said. It's nice. As I held her, I was surprised to find that years of pent-up frustration and pain seemed to be washing away with my tears. If you ever need a shoulder to cry on, she said softly, I hope you'll let it be mine. It's okay if you're not ready to move on yet. As long as you want to, I'll be here to help you find your way out of the past. I can wait until you're ready for me. I looked up from her shoulder, at the elegant line of her jaw. Isabel, will you really stay with me? Will you promise you won't just leave me one day? That you won't stop loving me? She met my gaze, the tip of her nose brushing against my forehead as she spoke. I won't, she said softly. Never. I stared at her, mesmerized. The ocean in her eyes was deep and steady. How long had it been since someone had looked at me with such sincerity and promised to love me forever? I gently touched her forehead with my finger. Isabel, why are you so beautiful? Why are your eyes so blue? They're like the sea. I trailed off, not finishing my thought. She smiled. My mother is American, and my father is French. I got my father's eyes and nose, and my mother's everything else. Then your parents must be very handsome and charming people, I said with a smile. They would be very happy to meet you, she replied, her deep blue eyes reflecting my own image back at me. My face flushed again, and I quickly pulled away from her. You're French, you wouldn't understand. In my culture, you only meet the parents when you're serious about marrying someone. She looked at my flustered state and smiled gently. I wasn't born and raised in France. I grew up in the States until I was 15, Then my family moved here. She turned me to face her, her gaze steady. So, I know exactly what meeting the parents means. I stared at her, my face burning. Isabel, I stammered, you're not playing fair. Back in New York, Leo wheeled Khloe out of the hospital. The silence between them was heavy and uncomfortable. Ever since the day she had accidentally called out my name, things between them had been awkward. At first, Leo had cried constantly, and no matter how much she apologized, he wouldn't forgive her. Now they had fallen into a cold, tense silence, barely speaking to each other. Leo wheeled her back into the mansion. The moment she was inside, a sharp pain went through her heart. There was nobody to greet her at the door, no smiling Ethan waiting on the stairs. And what hurt the most was the knowledge that she was the reason they were gone. She had ordered Buddy's death, and she had driven me away. Khloe, Leo said suddenly, his voice unexpectedly cold. What are you thinking about? She shook her head and forced a smile. Nothing. It's just been a while since I've been here. I'm feeling a little nostalgic. Is that all? His expression softened slightly. He helped her up the stairs and into the master bedroom. The room had been completely redecorated with his own things, wooden furniture and office supplies he liked. Her gaze fell on the nightstand. He had placed a vase of fresh flowers there, just as I always had. She closed her eyes, a wave of pain washing over her. She couldn't stop thinking about me. Everything she had done to me came rushing back, and an overwhelming flood of guilt and a strange sense of longing washed over her. Every memory was like a fresh cut to her heart. She took out her phone and called her assistant. Find out where Ethan's family immigrated to. I want to know where he is right now. The assistant on the other end of the line sounded surprised. Mr. Vance, ma'am? She was silent for a long moment before answering. Yes. She hung up the phone, pulled herself up, and walked over to the desk, pulling open the top drawer. It used to be filled with the love letters I had written her. She had threatened to make me burn them, but I could never bring myself to do it. Khloe, don't you even want to read one? I had pleaded. Not in the slightest, she had replied coldly, before walking out of the room. Now the drawer was filled with Leo's notebooks and watches. She closed it with a bitter smile and walked over to the closet. She opened the doors. It was filled with clothes that were nothing like my style. She suddenly found herself missing the custom dresses I had designed for her. I had always used the finest materials, created the most comfortable designs, and arranged them perfectly in the closet by color. She had never worn a single one. In fact, she had torn up the sketches. She remembered the pale, pained smile on my face that day, and her heart felt as if it had been struck by a sledgehammer. She sank to her knees in agony as the memories played over and over in her mind. It was as if she had been possessed back then, madly in love with Leo, cruelly tormenting me. My unconditional love, which she had trampled underfoot without a second thought. Ethan, I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Her phone rang, startling her. She answered it. Ms. Sterling, we've tracked Mr. Vance's movements. The entire family has emigrated to Europe. They've liquidated all their assets in the States, including the corporation. Khloe's heart clenched. Mr. Vance himself is currently vacationing in Rome, the assistant continued. I've sent the photos from the private investigator to your phone. She hung up and opened the message. The first photo showed me, smiling brightly, holding hands with a beautiful woman who looked to be of mixed European descent. A wave of intense displeasure and pain washed over her as she quickly swiped through the rest of the pictures. There was one of Isabel and me dancing at night, holding each other close. In another, Isabel was kissing my cheek, her arms wrapped tightly around me. The phone slipped from Khloe's hand and clattered to the floor. She let out a choked, painful sob. A pair of slippered feet appeared in her line of sight. Khloe. Leo picked up her phone and saw the pictures of me. Khloe, he said, his voice filled with disbelief as he stared down at her, kneeling and sobbing on the floor. Are you in love with Ethan? Answer me. He knelt beside her, shaking her, tears streaming down his face. Her lips parted, and after a long moment, she finally answered. Yes, I'm in love with Ethan. Meanwhile, Isabel and I were on our way to Cyprus, which was said to have the most beautiful beaches in the world, with crystal clear water and sand so fine it was like powder, where the blue of the sky melted into the blue of the sea. Isabel and I walked hand in hand along the shore of Aphrodite's rock. The deep blue of her eyes seemed to merge with the color of the sea, creating the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. They say this is the birthplace of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, she said. Legend has it that if two lovers pray here, she will grant them an eternal love. I looked out at the famous rock formation, which did look vaguely like a goddess rising from the waves. I found myself wanting to believe her. But was there really such a thing as eternal love? Isabel watched me, her expression serious. Perhaps eternal love is so rare that it's worth praying for. Ethan, I can't promise you forever, but I can promise you that what I feel for you, right here, right now, is real. And maybe all those real moments, added up one after another, are what make an eternity. I found myself getting lost in her eyes, wanting to let myself sink into the warmth and tenderness of that single moment. Our breaths mingled in the small space between us. Her eyelashes fluttered. Ethan, she whispered, are you going to push me away again? Our lips were just about to touch when a sharp voice cut through the air. Ethan, what do you think you're doing? Hearing that familiar, yet now so foreign voice, I flinched so hard I nearly fell into the water. Isabel caught me, holding my trembling body close. Let go of him. Khloe's voice was sharp as she grabbed my other wrist, trying to pull me away from Isabel. Her dark eyes were blazing with a fury that she couldn't seem to put into words, a fury that had ignited the moment she saw me about to kiss another woman. You're the one who needs to let go, Isabel shot back, her own face a mask of anger, her eyes flashing. Do you have any idea how much you've hurt him? At Isabel's words, Khloe's grip on my wrist slackened. Isabel seized the opportunity to pull me behind her, shielding me with her body. The sight seemed to make Khloe even angrier. This is between him and me. It has nothing to do with an outsider like you. Who are you, anyway? His flavor of the month? Or are you not even his girlfriend at all? Khloe's words clearly struck a nerve with Isabel. Though I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, she didn't move from her position in front of me. Khloe sneered. Do you have any idea who I am to him? He's been in love with me for 15 years. And you? Have you even known him for 2 months? Isabel looked down, her shoulders trembling slightly. Mistaking this for weakness, Khloe advanced. If you know what's good for you, you'll get out of my way. That's when Isabel snapped. In a flash, she swung, her fist connecting squarely with Khloe's jaw, sending her stumbling backward into the surf. Let me give you a piece of advice, Isabel said, her eyes blazing. I was the European junior boxing champion for 3 years running. And even though that was a while ago, I'm pretty sure I can still handle you. Isabel's fist flew through the air, striking Khloe hard in the face. Khloe tried to block the blow, but she was too weak, the difference in their strength too great. Blood streamed down Khloe's face. Isabel shook the blood from her knuckles and looked down at Khloe with cold disdain. Ethan loved you for 15 years. And what did you ever give him in return? Pain? Fear? Trauma? She took my hand, her voice a low warning. Stay away from him. Then she turned, and we walked away, leaving Khloe lying in the shallow water. The salt water stung her face, washing away the blood as it filled her nose and mouth. She sat up, coughing, and stared blankly after our retreating figures. Why? She murmured to herself, feeling helpless. Her body felt weaker than ever, but the image of me in her mind was sharper, more vivid. A powerful, unfamiliar emotion had broken through her defenses, compelling her to drop everything, to leave Leo, to come all this way. And when she had seen me, the man she now realized she'd been thinking of day and night, about to kiss Isabel, she had lost all control. Could it be? She placed a hand over her heart, feeling its strong, steady beat. Could it be that she had loved me all along? She remembered the strange, mechanical voice. Was it possible that she and Leo were the hero and heroine of some story, and that by falling in love with me, the villain, she had gone off script? She looked down at her hands and began to laugh. So all of it, her family's bankruptcy, her parents' deaths, her inexplicable hatred for me, her instant love for Leo, was it all just part of some pre-written story? The mechanical voice sounded in her head again. Female protagonist, you have become aware of the true nature of your reality. You are instructed to fulfill your obligations as the protagonist and return to Leo's side. Otherwise what? Khloe asked, her eyes narrowing into a cold smile. Otherwise, you will be deleted as a corrupted file. Your recent physical deterioration is a direct result of system intervention. You've been controlling my life for this long, and now you're going to delete me? The system was silent for a moment. Khloe, do you know why Ethan, who had always refused to sign the contract, suddenly changed his mind? She was stunned. Why? She demanded. The first person to become aware of this reality was not you. It was Ethan. He did not understand the full truth as you do now, but his obsession with you, his refusal to follow his prescribed path, caused a deviation in the plot. He did not exit the narrative at the designated point, the system continued, which resulted in Leo being shunted onto Ethan's intended path, leaving the country, heartbroken. In that timeline, to avenge Leo, you drove Ethan's parents to suicide and then tortured Ethan himself to death. Her eyes were bloodshot. Hearing the description of how she had tortured me to death, her heart seized with a violent pain. Therefore, I revealed the true nature of the plot to him in an attempt to restore the original timeline. I did not anticipate that you, the female protagonist, would then begin to deviate and that all attempts at correction would fail. The system's voice sounded almost weary. If you return to Leo, there may still be a chance to correct the narrative. Never. The word was a snarl on her lips. I will not be your puppet any longer. I am going to live my own life. That is not possible, Khloe, the system replied coldly. You were created to be the heroine. You are not permitted to have independent thoughts. If you continue on this path, the narrative integrity of this world will collapse, and you will cease to exist. And what about Ethan? She asked after a moment of silence. Ethan will be reassigned as the new protagonist. He will be allowed to live a life of his own choosing. Hearing this, Khloe let out a long breath. Well then, that settles it. I'm definitely not going back to Leo. I will follow my heart, and I will love Ethan. Seeing that she could not be swayed, the system said no more. Since you have made an irrevocable choice, my presence is no longer required. With that, the voice in her head fell silent. Ethan, Khloe whispered, clenching her fists at her sides. In that case, I will tell you how I truly feel. Back at a little taverna by the sea, Isabel and I sat in a comfortable silence. The waiter brought out plate after plate of delicious Cypriot food. I'm sorry, I said, for dragging you into all of this. Isabel looked at me, her expression soft. Ethan, none of this is your fault. And besides, I am trying to win your heart after all. She poured some deep red wine into my glass. You have to try the local wine. She raised her own glass and clinked it against mine. To Ethan, she said, and to the first step of his new life. As we drank the rich, smooth wine, her smile seemed even more captivating. I don't know what I would have done without you today, I said, looking at her gratefully. And I had no idea you were a boxer. There's a lot you don't know about me, she said with a smile. But if you'd like to find out, I would be very happy. My face flushed, and I quickly looked away, stammering, this place, it has a very nice Mediterranean feel. She stood up, leaned across the table, and gently pressed her lips to mine. Sorry, she said, sitting back down with a smile, though her eyes remained fixed on my mouth. I just wanted to finish that kiss we started at Aphrodite's Rock. My face was on fire, and my heart was pounding. She looked at me, her smile so gentle, her gaze so sincere. So, Mr. Vance, she said, will you be my boyfriend? I smiled and I nodded. In that moment, for the first time in a long time, I was listening only to my own heart. No! A soaking wet Khloe appeared out of nowhere and grabbed my wrist, making me drop my wine glass, which shattered on the floor. Isabel shot to her feet, her voice sharp. Let go of him. Khloe ignored her, her eyes fixed on me. Ethan, I know everything. My relationship with Leo, it was all just part of the plot. The person I've really loved, all along, is you. Isabel's anger gave way to a look of stunned pity. Are you out of your mind? Isabel grabbed the front of Khloe's shirt, but Khloe's gaze never left my face. Ethan, the system, it told me everything. I'm so sorry. I'll make it up to you. My feelings for Leo, they weren't real, they were just part of the story. The truth is, I love you too. A flicker of contempt crossed my face. Khloe, what on earth makes you think I still love you? She stared at me intently. You only left me because the plot forced you to. The system just told me it's gone for good. There's nothing standing between us now. I shook my head. I didn't leave you because of some plot. I left you because you broke my heart, completely and utterly. I walked over to Isabel and took her hand. I loved you for 15 years, Khloe, and for 15 years you pushed me away. Now that I've finally found a new life, a new person to love, you show up and demand that I go back to loving you. Looking at her deathly pale face, I couldn't stop a sneer from forming on my lips. I don't love you anymore, Khloe. Please, get out of my life and stay out. At that, Isabel let go of Khloe's shirt. Maybe in your past with Ethan, I would have been an outsider, she said. But now he has chosen me. He is a part of my life, and I will not stand by and let you hurt him. Her eyes were like chips of ice. This is the last time I'm going to tell you to leave. If you ever bother us again, I promise you, it will not end this peacefully. Isabel squeezed my hand, and we walked away together, leaving Khloe standing there, motionless. The warmth from my wrist still lingered on her fingertips, but she knew she would never be able to reach me again. So this is how I must have felt, she thought, when she had walked away with Leo, leaving me to bleed out on the pavement. This was the pain I had felt. She slowly sank to her knees, the shards of the broken wine glass digging into her skin, drawing blood. Oblivious to the pain from the glass digging into her knees, Khloe just murmured to herself, even if it wasn't really me doing those things, the pain I caused you is real. The other patrons and the staff at the taverna stared at her in alarm. But no matter how the waiter tried to speak to her, she just stared blankly at the floor, lost in her own world, not saying a word. Ethan, our next stop was supposed to be Spain, Isabel said, stopping as we walked down the path. But I'm afraid you might not be in the mood to travel anymore. I'm sorry, Isabel, I said, my voice full of apology. I promised I'd spend the rest of your vacation with you. Isabel smiled. Well then, can I invite you to spend the rest of the vacation at my home, with my family? She pulled me into a hug. Ethan, don't apologize. None of this was your fault. I closed my eyes and leaned into her warm embrace, inhaling the faint, fresh scent of her. It's just, Isabel paused. Is that woman all right in the head? All that talk about plots and systems. I couldn't help but laugh into her shoulder. She laughed too, the breeze catching a strand of her hair. If she needs one, she said lightly, I know a very good neurologist I could recommend. Isabel, I murmured, my fingertips brushing her cheek. She looked up, meeting my eyes. If this world really was just a story someone wrote, she asked, and everything that happens is just part of a plot someone else is controlling, would you still love me? I felt my fingers tremble against her skin. She sensed my anxiety and covered my hand with her warm one, giving it a gentle squeeze. I don't know if our